We are back for part 2 of this episode. We were discussing so much that I didn't want to lose any of it. I didn't want to have to cut any of it out. So we have literally done this as a double episode for the first time ever for the Shark Trust podcast. So please listen now as we continue our conversation with Dr. Victoria Camilieri-Asch. I'm your host, Mark Stokes-Packer, and you're listening to Series 2 of the Shark Trust podcast. I watched a video, I think it was of the Replex one. I think it might have been on LinkedIn, maybe by Dr. Mitchell might have posted it. Is there a place where people can see this, how it works? Like if you got videos that I could maybe add in the description or something like that, where people could click on it, watch how it actually works?
Absolutely. So the website from the stakeholder and industry partners have videos that were taken in the field during the research. So I'm happy to share the link from their website. It's been used by other stakeholders as well since, just to promote locally the effectiveness of such devices and favor uptake for those willing to try it.
Because it is really interesting. The video I watched, I can't remember what species it was, but you see the line coming up. It's probably like 20 foot down, and then the sharks are kind of like this little tornado around, but none of them actually going to the actual fish.
So the other thing to account for, which most fishery scientists will pick up on, but not necessarily others, that fish species is appealing to that shark species, but not all of them are. Some species that were caught on the line are not favorite species of shark, and that's why we think that looking at the diet is really important. Scorpionfish or fish with spines or less flesh in proportion to their body size tend to be less depredated, and the data is certainly showing that. So there is an aspect there where sharks would pick and choose what they want to depredate on, in a way, in areas of really high productivity. So that's why we want to look into that driving factor.
Sharks can be fussy eaters. That's good.
Well, when the productivity is high and locally there is a really high shark abundance, there might be some level of competition and advantageous choosing, let's put it this way. They tend to be more selective what they're going for. So it's an interesting behavior on top of the rest, and we would like to use research to entangle that and clarify in the behavioral sequence, what's really happening and why.
Using your expertise, why is understanding shark sensory biology so important when developing these devices? Like you said, they've got like such low levels of those electropulses coming out of these devices. What could happen if it was like, could it ever be like too high?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the detection thresholds for the animal is quite low from many of the species looked at to date, but what the manufacturers are producing is quite high. So there is definitely a need to better understand the sensory biology of species involved in depredation events and subsequent bycatch most of the time. Industry partners and stakeholders would use that information to develop even more adapted and effective deterrent devices or tools if they could tailor to specific species of sharks and their capability in terms of detecting electrosensory cues.
Earlier on in the episode, you spoke about there were like over 30 species, I think, that were identified in depredation. So you could end up having devices that would specialize for different groups
or different families, I would say. So carcharodontic sharks or requiem sharks are a family of shark, very different from carpet sharks, for instance, more reef associated, and the way that electrosensory system is distributed on the body is kind of evolved to match survival needs. And so there are differences, but it's more down to the family or the order. So it's still very advantageous to develop something targeting a reef shark species, for instance, or pelagic shark of the same family, because you're highly likely to have a device that could work for both. In saying that, there is slight differences between pelagic and and sharks staying around islands. So yes, it's important to account for those differences, I think, and to really have a line of communication quite wide open between industry partners, stakeholders, and researchers working on the neurobiological basis of this behavior.
Obviously, the technology is one tool that can be used to reduce bycatch. Are there other things that fishers can do, that could do, that would help reduce depredation and bycatch as well?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, in addition to developing and testing shark deterrent technologies, there are a range of practical measures which can reduce shark depredation. We mentioned moving fishing location frequently, avoiding fishing near other vessels and create a cluster or hotspot of fishing activity, moving on pretty quickly. Once depredation occurs the first time, there is no point in staying because more sharks will turn up. Diversifying the catch of target species, being a bit more lenient or flexible as to what other species could constitute a target catch at that location. Not dumping fish waste at sea is a big one. But also using reels, electric reels or hand lines to retrieve the fish faster. And lastly, using lures and jigs instead of baits to reduce that natural use from a fish struggling on the line for shark behaviors. And sharing these measures, most importantly, sharing these measures with the wider community, whether it's local community, residents, or tourists, through educational campaigns, can really help mitigate depredation at a wider scale across an entire region. An example of this from our research at Lord Howe Island in Australia, where we worked with fishers to come up with a list of best practice guidelines to reduce shark interactions that was disseminated to locals, visiting fishers, and also tourists during high peak season. So we use flyers, signage, and posters to reach out to all of these different aspects of the community.
Do you have people that like go to, I don't know if you have like fish markets, something like that, to the fishermen, talk them through how it works, what the options are?
Yeah, so we use different pathways to reach out to local communities, not only paper-based flyers, posters and signage, but also talk series at the local museum and schools, because we know that students will talk to their family and parents around them, and also other members of the community. And we used in some instances radio, and local newspapers have been really helpful because everyone on the island would receive an update monthly, usually, on those remote island systems about what's going on and which research has been happening, what's been discovered, or socially what's been happening on the island. And we would use these platforms on top of social media to say when we're coming, why we're coming this time, which kind of help we'll be relying on. And afterwards, we usually conclude by giving a talk about what we've been finding out that trip. And we always publish again other articles down the track in between visits to let people know, okay, this is what we found the last trip. We'll be back for that reason, doing that, etc. So people know our level of involvement with who we've been working. And it also helped in a way engaging with more people by doing that. Those talk series, or the fact that we are a bit more visible, did encourage the development of a citizen science project on North Howe Island, where we partner with one of the local dive operators to run a shark ID, photo ID project. And it's been really well uptaken by residents and tourists and local operators. And it's just opening up more channels at the end of the day when you're doing that, because people really feel integrated and included in the research you do, and they feel empowered to participate and help along the side.
You've highlighted throughout this entire thing how important it is to work with the locals, work with fishers, work with communities. Throughout your research, have you seen shifts from people, like more positive attitudes towards sharks through that kind of relationship you've had with those communities?
I think yes. Overall, we've seen a shift when we start a project in a place where clearly depredation is one of the key issues for management of different aspects of island life. We saw a shift from the first meeting of a starting project to the very end, usually 2 to 3 years later, and some projects are still ongoing. You really sense a shift, not necessarily in our shall aspect in daily practices. I think there has been a bit of a shift in fishing behavior, but more the attitude and the understanding of the context and the level of local governance that has changed towards that issue. It's more that where we saw the shifts happen, and it's been very rewarding, I think, to come to that point where it was a pretty closed issue to something not black and white, but more gray level issue where there is a lot of things that can be done, a lot of things that can be locally decided and locally communicated about, and we're just helping out by providing the data, and that's the main role we shall and should play only in that local governance. So it's been really rewarding, I think, to just enable that opening up of the discussion, making sure that everyone involved is around the same table and facilitating clear strategy development based on data and based on local knowledge, and then local governance take over. I think that's what's been the most rewarding about these projects.
We are going to take another really quick break to hear from sponsors of this podcast, and then we'll come straight back, so stick with us. This episode is brought to you by Surfears, the earplugs that let sound in but keep water out. Perfect for diving, surfing or snorkeling. Surfears 4.0 feature a re-engineered fused core and mesh design, paired with tough silicone rubber, making them more durable than ever. They're designed with sustainability in mind, using materials like ocean plastic and recycled silicone. We've tried them and honestly, they're a game changer. Comfortable, eco-conscious, and they actually work. Thank you, Surfears, for sponsoring this episode and keeping our ears happy and healthy. Victoria, if we strip it right back, so we've got sharks and humans going after the same fish. What does successful coexistence for sharks and humans look like in your expertise in this field?
So how scientists, fishers, and communities work together to reduce that conflict, yeah. So recent research shows that reducing conflict between fishers and sharks is most effective when all stakeholders involved, scientists, managers, fishers, local communities, and work together through collaborative management and co-design research and mitigating measures together. That's where the best uptake and successful outcomes arose. And Fisher provides invaluable knowledge about where when depredation occurs, usually. So when we start a new project, without that knowledge, we can't design anything. So that's the starting point. The historical context, like I said previously, of local fisheries is crucial as well, because often enough, researchers that propose the research, pitch for funding, received it and start a project don't really know, if it's not published in the literature, nor in grey literature in reports to fisheries or local governance. If that data is not available, we have to start with the community consultation and get that data somehow. So historical context is paramount as well. Changing bag limits, changing number of operational, capacity and things like that are crucial to understand the baseline of the problem and how practices and behavioral response have changed. So all of that is crucial, and that's why we need to involve locals. There is no other way around it. Then scientists obviously contribute biological knowledge on sharks, or specific shark species sometimes. Monitoring tools that have been developed, or what are the latest technology that can be used to better understand the ecological behavior, movement patterns, and etc. And also provide logistical and research framework to run trials in the field with them. And we usually do that with them. So we use local fisher on board that we go with them and match their daily activities to also report on what's being done before running trials, and then run trials with them, so they also see how to use the device and how we collect the data and everything. So then for the communicating, the reporting is just so much more efficient and so integrated in the discussions that it becomes, we are completely partners all on the same level in those projects. And that's how it's been working very efficiently, I think, in and out of each visit. And then, so for the evaluation of mitigation strategies, it's not just a scientific evaluation, there is also the practical component and socioeconomics, so local communities and governments are involved in those discussions for us to be able to report comprehensively about these devices or any tool that we trialed. And then community involvement obviously helps ensure that the solutions are practical, culturally appropriate, and widely accepted for the uptake and sustainability of such mitigation measure adoptions, for instance. Other studies from across Australia and other regions in the world have shown that co-designed project approach improve trust, increase participation in data collection, like I mentioned, and lead to more sustainable and effective management outcomes overall.
Great thing. So I know that you went to Sharks International, one of the recent conferences. Amazing conference. If anyone's interested in shark science conservation, they should definitely go to the next one. I can't remember where it is. I know it's in 2030. It's like the World Cup of sharks. There was a whole session dedicated to shark depredation. Does that kind of give you hope that this is a thing that we can solve?
It's giving the hope, if anything, that now there is a community focusing different lenses to that issue. I think what helped us, that conference helped us realize that many research entities and groups are now investing their time or switching slightly their research question to invest more time in co-developing and testing, assessing practical solutions to reduce bycatch and depredation of sharks and related species. So if anything, both issues are interlinked. Like I explained earlier, on some level, depredating animals get bycaught after consuming a hookfish in the process. So there is an increasing number now of people working not just on depredation or just on bycatch, but working on both together and tackle this dual issue in different parts of the world. So the recent international gathering of more than 800 shark scientists in Sri Lanka last month for the quadrennial meeting of Sharks International was incredible. And it was a perfect platform to host that first session dedicated just to shark depredation management. I think it's the first one in the history of this conference, and it has offered an incredible opportunity to identify and connect with all the research groups willing or currently working on that or any aspect of it, and just to find ways towards fisher-shark coexistence, find ways to not only test solution, but also assess fisher-shark interaction across the world in a standardized manner as a group, as an international group. So yeah, we suspect that this research space will grow and reflect a need for fishing communities worldwide.
What do you think the next 5 years of, it could be your research, could be that whole group, the community you've now developed from Sharks International. What do you think you guys need to be looking at? What sort of research do you think you're going to be doing?
I think it would be multifaceted, most likely. At this stage, it would be a platform to share who has been doing what, where, and testing which specific device. So, for instance, the review that I mentioned earlier would be a bit of a starting point. And other people have reviewed different aspects in different areas, but this one that has reviewed the different tools existing to reduce depredation in the world would be probably paired up with similar reviews that have been done by colleagues on bycatch reduction and bycatch mitigation. And it will create a platform, I think, a workshop type group where people will regularly meet to discuss, based on that listing, to discuss what are the priority research questions that we want to tackle, and kind of tackle them in a standardized manner, agreed between groups, so everyone can test the same thing in a different fishing sector, different fishing type or context, locality involving different shark species, and having that comprehensive assessment worldwide, I guess, that will start to determine, what's really valuable at larger scale or for different types of fishery, and really have that conversation going where governments will directly be using information from.
Very exciting couple of years ahead in that world.
Another aspect that I didn't mention that could be useful more on a local scale. So some of the projects, and the one that we've been having for a long time now and still ongoing, the Lord Howe Island Shark Research Program has now accumulated data on shark movement, fishing vessel activity movement, basic biology and sensory biology, population genetics as well, whether that population is connected to others, is it unique, how are they, what's the population status even, if sharks were continuously removed now and then from the ecosystem, what impact it has ecologically. So we tackle quite a few specific questions within that big umbrella project. Now the goal is to integrate that into a scenario modeling, where stakeholders can play with different parameters. What if we take that management measure or that measure, and run what it would mean for the scenario over decades in terms of shark population and target fish population. So you need that baseline data. So you need the data from the researchers to be able to run this. And now we're trying to integrate all of that into a modeling scenario tool that can be used for management. So that's another thing that we are willing to propose at that local scale, developing such a modeling framework to give to local governments. Could be something adapted to each locality when you have enough baseline data to run it. So we're really keen to push that forward as well. That would be an output that could be used across quite a few systems and communities.
Now we're coming to the end of the episode, and at each episode, Kat, who's our Living with Sharks project lead, has a question that she wants everyone to answer. How do we plan ahead? And I think you have answered this multiple times throughout this episode, but just in a couple of sentences, how do we plan ahead and manage recovering shark populations to ensure coexistence is as harmonious as possible?
I think the most straightforward answer is work together. Make sure that all stakeholders are included in the conversation early on from the onset of any project, and co-work together towards designing what's best for that locality.
When we talk about conservation, sometimes we like to remind people why we like to work with sharks and stuff. So do you have like a favorite species? Like, what would you vote as the best shark? Could be one that you've just got this personal connection to.
I'm trying to think, because I have many in mind. Just from a pure evolutionary perspective, I like many weird species, but I think I'll do a global one. A shark which is in front of you, alive and evolving in his own environment.
That is actually very sweet. That's very sweet. Good answer. I think it's a short fin mako. I'm putting that out there now.
I tend to like evolutionary funky ones more, just because of my background, I think. The weirder, the better. I actually enjoy working more and more with Chimaeras nowadays. With a really dear friend and colleague down in New Zealand. There are so many species that people don't commonly talk about, and they're really cool. And yeah, so I don't have one in particular. I think just being able to witness one in its own environment and have that mutual understanding and just witness each other is enough. That's the best feeling.
I think Chimera massively underappreciated. Me and Lou have been in the Shark Trust like 4 years-ish. The only time we've ever seen someone give a presentation at a conference on Chimera was one person who's called Romaric Jack, and he loved Chimera, and we all loved him for it. But we've seen hundreds of presentations, and we just never see Chimera. I didn't go to Sharks International, so there could have been a couple, but...
This year there was more. So we didn't touch base on that during the interview, but There is more, and it's another field. I was really glad to see that. So depredation was a session, but also deep water shark species and trade was a session as well, and it's needed, dearly needed. And so there is more research now on deep water shark species, and there is potential bridges and collaborations between the two fields, weirdly enough, because people avoiding depredation tend to fish deeper. It's one aspect I didn't mention. And as a byproduct, bycatch deep water species that they don't retain, that might not survive, that sometimes don't survive well when surfacing. So that's another upcoming issue. People avoiding depredation fish deeper, and if they have some level of commercial capacity with bigger gear, they would fish quite deep on seamounts, and they would bycatch deep water shark species that might not survive and get biotraumatized. So that's an upcoming byproduct issue of depredation mitigation in certain fisheries.
If listeners and viewers of the podcast wanted to find out more about your work, where can they find you?
That's a good one. I'm not one of the researchers with many platforms available online about what I do. I think the best is through the Lord Howe Island Shark Research Program page, where we update semi-regularly on what we've been doing, and then via email, on LinkedIn. I don't post a lot, I'm sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. Vic, thank you again for joining us on the Shark Trust podcast. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you, and hopefully you'll be on here again soon.
Okay, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Louis, at the background. You're probably still here.
Yeah. Thank you, Louis, behind the camera. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Shark Trust podcast. If you have enjoyed it, please like, share it, comment. Any questions you have, comment them below, and we can send them to Vic, or we can answer them in a future episode. We also really appreciate it if you can give us a rating. So if you've really enjoyed it, give us a 5-star rating. I really appreciate it. But it means that more and more people will see us in their feeds, on their podcast platform, and then we can get these messages to them. If you wanted to support our shark conservation even more, you can go to the Shark Trust website where you can become a member, you can adopt a shark, you can wear this really cool merch, this is one of our brand new t-shirts, and wear your support, or even sign the Big Shark Pledge and use your voice. There is something everybody can do. You don't have to just buy stuff and support it financially. You can use your time, you can use your voice. Massive thank you to Series 2 sponsors, which is Surfers, where you've heard these amazing adverts. Please protect your ears. I have surfer's ears, so I get in pain a lot. And Surfies have been an absolute game changer in helping me. Thank you to the Revolution Studio, who do all of our podcast artwork, which is all very pretty. Video and sound editing has been done by Louis Hogan behind the camera. Research and planning by Kat Gordon and myself. I've been your host, Mark Stokes-Packer. Thank you for listening to the Shark Trust podcast.